vivevo in Italia, andavo tutti I giorni in gelateria.
Okay, let's hear that again, just for our listeners' sake and also for Isla's. One more time.
Quando vivevo in Italia, andavo tutti I giorni in gelateria.
Tutti I giorni in gelateria.
Isla, can you work out that?
When I lived
Was that
in Italy,
when you lived in Italy?
I went to
You
the
went
ice cream
to
store every
an
day.
ice cream shop every day? See?
Exactly, well done. And it's good that you used simple pasts in English to translate that, because these simple past, when I lived in Italy, I went to an ice cream shop every day, is absolutely perfect, it's absolutely acceptable. The idea, though, is that in Italian, these andavo and vivevo are ongoing repeated actions. So we could also say, when I used to live in Italy, I used to go to an ice cream shop every day. I don't want to confuse things, but there is another way of saying this in English.
Perfetto. No, it's quite straightforward, I can say. What happens with reflexive verbs when we're in the imperfect tense? Do you change anything about it? Or?
Okay, good question.
See, yeah, we didn't really talk about reflexive verbs with imperfetto. No, it's quite straightforward, I can say. We simply use the imperfect form of the verb and we add the reflexive pronoun in front of the verb. So, should we do a couple of examples?
Let's do a couple of examples. Yeah.
Ad esempio, let's take verb vestirsi.
To get dressed.
Sì, so if you want to say, for example, I was getting dressed, I used to get dressed, or I would get dressed.
On the beach at sunset, of course.
Oh.
What would you say?
So we do the imperfetto of vestire, vestivo, and then we add the reflexive pronoun for the first person singular, mi vestivo.
Okay, so that comes, the reflexive pronoun comes first, and then you're part of the verb. So it's good in the imperfect because we don't need to worry about our auxiliary verbs. There are no auxiliary verbs in the imperfect. It's not like the perfect tense, but here we simply put the reflexive pronoun first and then the imperfect tense of whatever verb we're working on. So if I was getting dressed, or I used to get dressed, was mi vestivo. Isla, could you translate? Let's say Alessia was putting on her makeup. Do you remember the verb to put on your makeup?
Is it truccarsi?
Truccarsi, yeah.
Truccarsi.
So, Alessia was putting on her makeup.
Alessia si truccarsa?
Alessia si truccava?
Si truccava. Yeah, just what's your stress there?
Alessia si truccava.
Okay, so she was putting on her makeup. Something else, Francesca?
Sì, in inglese, sì.
In inglese, sì.
My mom used to worry all the time.
Mia mamma.
Good one, okay. So to worry, it's not, of course, reflexive in English, but it is in Italian. So, Isla, can you work out what my mother used to worry all the time would be?
I think it would be mia mamma si preoccupava sempre.
Okay.
Almost perfect, but your Spanish is interfering.
Si preoccupava.
The reflexive pronoun is si, not se. Okay?
Mia mamma
so,
si
mia mamma si preoccupava sempre.
Sempre.
My mother worried
Mia
herself all the time, or used to worry herself all the
sempre.
time. Try it again.
Mia mamma si preoccupava sempre.
Si preoccupava sempre.
There's one other thing.
So this is day 7 of week 6, and this week I started with a new tool, the short stories books, and I started with this one first. So I'm kind of going to describe my process that I go through with these books, which is similar to Link in some ways, but also a little different. So for one thing, obviously this is in physical book form and not on an app on your phone. And so here I do 3 passes just like I did with Link, but on this one, my first pass I read with the audio, same thing as with Link, but on my second pass I read, same thing as Link, but this time obviously I have to physically highlight words that I don't know. And so I have two colors. Green are words that I don't know, and it's the first time that I've encountered those words. And then I also use yellow for words in which I've, like you can see here with or my, words that I've encountered before. And I may know those words, I may not know those words, but I'll highlight them all the same, and I use yellow as a note of like, hey, I've already highlighted this word. And so if I don't remember the definition, then I know, okay, maybe I need to, if it's an important word, you know, sometimes, I mean, there'll be a word like some type of plant or something, and it's not really that important, but other words are important. And then on my third pass, this is where it's different from Lee. Instead of like just repeating the sentences, I actually just go through and with words. So with these short stories books, most of them, at least the ones that I've used, they have these words in bold, and that means those are words that they've identified as possible words that you may not know the definition for. And in the back they have, you know, this list of all the vocab in that short story. And then obviously I go back here, and when I highlight a word, I go to the back and I highlight it as well, so that way it's just easier to find. Because on my third pass, I go back through, in every sentence that has a highlighted word, I reread. So I don't reread the entire story. However, with the Spanish short stories and the Russian short stories, I did reread the entire story. But with the Spanish short stories, I also didn't have the audio like I do for this one. You just, it's great. Most of these short story series have the audio that's just the story spoken by a native speaker, which is nice. And then the last thing, after I've done my third pass, which is the reread of the words that I don't know. Also, most of these short story series have this reasunto de la storia, which is just a short summary of the story, and that will be both in the target language and in English. I never read the English one personally, but could be helpful for you. And then they all have these, and you'll see here the vocab in which they don't have the definitions in the back, but are words that I've highlighted. I just manually, after my second pass, I go through here and I just add my own words to the dictionary, essentially. And then the very last thing that I do after my third pass, before moving on to the next story, is there are these 5, reading comprehension questions for the story. You can do them, not do them. It's not really, that important or make or break it, but, takes literally, a minute to do. And I just like to see how I did. And then this is a difference with Link. Link had, in all their mini stories, they have these questions and the answer is in the question, essentially. So it doesn't really test your reading comprehension, which is fine. I mean, you're here to learn a language, not necessarily improve your reading comprehension, but it can be a useful tool as well, just to see, oh, did you understand, the story that you read? And so, yep, that does it for my short stories. Ciao, siamo in la sesta settimana delle 12 settimane con il mio esperimento con italiano. Questa settimana ho fatto 6 lezioni di italiano sul Italki con la mia maestra. Oggi siamo domenica, quindi stasera della domenica, quindi ho terminato con i miei studi oggi. Domenica oggi è un buon giorno perché questa mattina ho avuto un buon allenatore alla palestra, quindi sono felice e con la mia lezione di italiano posso sentire che ora comincio a avere progresso in la maniera di che parlo, e quindi ho 6 settimane che mi resto e questo esperimento, sono molto felice per vedere che va se passa. Okay, so this is week 6 of 12 of my 12-week experiment, and I'm pretty happy with how things are coming along in my conversations with my tutor on italki. I'm really starting to make strides, obviously, in making a lot of mistakes, and I'll get caught up, oh, do you know how do you say this or that, or grammar constructions, particularly with the past tense, because even though I'm familiar now, at least to a certain extent, with the imperfect and the perfect past tense, I'm still not fully comfortable with using them, obviously, on the fly. But yeah, we're having real conversations about music, the gym, all kinds of things, and working my way through it. And so with that, let's go ahead and talk about what I did this week. So this week I introduced a new tool. We'll get to that. So now my time is broken up across 6 tools, whereas in the first phase it was just 4 things: Coffee Break Italian, Link, Italian Uncovered, and Assimil. Now I've still got those 4 things, but I've also got italki, obviously, and now I'm also using those short stories in Italian for beginner and intermediate books that I've talked about before. So starting with Coffee Break Italian, I've done at least 1 lesson in Coffee Break Italian every day this week, so I continued my perfect record, 7 out of 7 days this week, and 42 out of 42 days overall, because we're end of the 6th week. This week I did 22 lessons in Coffee Break Italian for 10.5 hours total time, and yeah, I can tell it's definitely serving me well. I've already listened to a lot of the episodes in season 2 a second time, and I can tell I'm probably going to listen to quite a few of them multiple times. I know for sure there's a few that I'm going to be listening to 3 or maybe 4 times, and I'm only a little over halfway through the 2nd season. So really happy with that. Link, so I did Link 5 out of 7 days this week, for a total of 39 out of 42 possible days in the 6 weeks. But that comes with an asterisk, because Monday I didn't do any Link, but I actually wasn't planning on it. I brought my short stories book to the gym and I had my highlighter where I was highlighting words and stuff, and it's just not that practical. So I was like, well, so I took a look on Link to see what kind of other lessons and options there were, because for Spanish, for instance, and with Russian, I just uploaded PDFs of the books I wanted to read, but I kind of just impromptu looked on Link to see what there was for Italian available, and they have Il Piccolo Principe, which is the Little Prince in Italian, and so I decided to start that. So it's really 5 out of 6 days, but I'm just counting it 5 out of 7 for in the books. And so I did 5 days of Link for 3.13 hours, and Il Piccolo Principe is 27 lessons in Link. And so before with the mini stories, I was counting each mini story as a quote unquote lesson. And now I'm just counting it. Okay, I did Link this day, or I didn't do Link this day. So it's going to be counted like Italian Uncovered, where I just say, okay, yeah, essentially the number of lessons is going to match the number of days. And The Little Prince is 27 lessons in that on Link, and I completed 14 out of the 27. So, or actually I'm on 14 now. So I'm literally in the middle of that. So I'm literally midway through the book. We'll see if I finish the book next week, maybe so, because there's also another day this week, and we'll see with some of the other things where I missed days because I had doctor's appointments and things pop up. So Link's going well. Assamil completed 5 lessons for a little over 2.5 hours. That's also going well. Not a whole lot to say about that. It's more of the same, you know. There is, I guess, maybe next week I'll show my Assamil notebook again, because I haven't done that since the first or second week, and there might be some things I can talk about in there in terms of my approach to studying that. Next up is Italian Uncovered. I only did Italian Uncovered 3 out of the 7 days. Oh, Assamil. I've done Assamil 5 out of the 7 days this week for a total of 37 out of possible 42 days. With Italian Uncovered, I did 3 out of 7 days this week for exactly half, 21 out of 42 possible days. And I did 3 days and for an hour, 59 minutes to be completely honest. So almost an hour. So about 20 minutes each session. Italian Uncovered is something that I'm wanting to be more consistent with, but obviously only so much time in the day, and I'm already cramming as much in pretty much as I physically can with the free time that I have. But for instance, sometime when I eat, I'll watch a YouTube video or Netflix, which that's where some of my passive watching comes from, but sometimes I'm not watching Italian things. However, to try and progress through Italian Uncovered more quickly and maybe also finish it within the first 3 phases, I'm thinking about replacing at least some of the YouTube and Netflix watching with more Italian Uncovered, like the grammar videos and vocabulary videos. So yeah, it's useful. Same thing as last week, where I pick up little things here and there. It reinforces things I've seen elsewhere as well. Then the new kit this week is the short stories books. I did 7 short stories. I read 7 out of 7 days for a total of 7 out of 7 possible days, because obviously I didn't have the short stories books in phase 1. I completed 7 short stories for a little over 4 hours, 4.03 hours worth of short story time. The way you have seen it earlier in the video, the way that I'm using that tool, it's the exact same way that I used it for Spanish and Russian as well. And so, yep, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and it worked well for those languages. So I don't really, right now there's nothing else that I can think of that I want to do that I'm not currently doing with those short stories. I think I'm getting a lot of juice out of them. And then the last thing are my Italki lessons. I did 6 lessons this week. I missed 1 day, and it was completely my fault. I actually booked an Italki lesson 15 minutes before I had another appointment that I had to go to, so that I ended up missing that lesson. So I completed 6 out of 7 lessons for a possible 11 out of 14. And so that's 6 hours, because each lesson's an hour a piece. And I really, same thing as last week with the Italki lessons, I really like my teacher. We get along well. There's a good mix of grammar, working through a book, but a lot of times we're just using, because in the book, you know, as you're building up vocab and sentences and phrases, There'll be a certain subject or topic like, music, sports, school, whatever else. And so a lot of times, the book obviously has questions, and then we obviously cover that, but then that ends up opening up an actual dialogue and discussion between the two of us about whatever topic it is. And for instance, today in our discussion, we didn't even really use the book, I don't think. No, that was yesterday. So yeah, that was the case the first week, and it seems to be the case this week as well, where about half the lessons we are using the book, and the other half we just start talking at the beginning and then kind of get wrapped up in the conversation and in Italian, obviously. And so that's been good, and look forward to continuing to make more progress with that. Then the last category are the passive studying. This week I did passive studying 3 out of the 7 days, just because I have been busy, and I do watch and consume other content other than just Italian stuff. So to try and keep up with some of those other things like podcasts and YouTube videos that I like to watch, YouTubers that I like to follow, a lot of that's times coming out of the passive watching. So I did 3 days for an hour and a half. It was 2 Netflix episodes of the show that I've been watching, and today I watched like 35 minutes worth of YouTube videos from Lucrezia. And yep, so that about does it. Then the total for the week. So the total time this week was 27.26 hours of active studying, 1.55 hours of passive studying. You can see that there. And then how that compares to last week, actually quite favorably, which kind of surprised me, but kind of doesn't at the same time, because last week I also had a day or two that kind of got screwed up due to other things, which was unfortunate since I had the whole week off. But this week I only worked 3 days, so I did have a lot of free time, even with the other things that popped up. So yeah, I did half an hour of studying more last week. So I'm at, almost 55 hours of studying into phase 2 so far, which is great. And I'm happy with that. We'll see how it goes as work starts to pick back up over the next couple weeks. Other than that, thank you for following me, and hope you all have a good week.